Okay, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending really on where you are in the world. You're all very welcome to this official virtual solutions event of the Second World Summit for Social Development, also known as the World Social Summit. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Professor Enda Murphy. I am a professor at University College Dublin, and I'm also a member of the High Level Advisory Council of the SDG Academy at UN-SDSN. Before we begin the formalities and go into our session and discuss our speakers and so on, I want to thank a few of the organising partners. First of all, I want to thank University College Dublin, a Government of Ireland SDG champion for helping organising the event, to SDSN as well, also to the International Organisation of Migration, and also for UNITAR, all of whom are co-hosts for this particular session today. I also want to acknowledge that this event is also connected as a satellite session to the Greening Education Forum organised by the NGO UNESCO Liaison Committee as well. But what we're talking about today, the theme that we have for today for this particular virtual solutions event, is about pathways to future skills, so multi-stakeholder solutions for sustainable and inclusive labour markets for all in the future, really. And what we're discussing is the urgency, really, of addressing the global skills gap that we have at the moment, in particular for green and digital transitions, and for the transformations that are required for labour market sustainability and a sustainable economy and sustainable development more generally into the future. We have a really wonderful event today for you. I think we have some fantastic speakers from all across the world. The format of the event today will be that we will have two keynote speakers that will be 10 minutes each, followed by a moderated panel session where we will also have 4 additional speakers discussing multi-stakeholder solutions from a range of different perspectives. And so we really hope you enjoy the event, and we're going to continue and go right into the event because we have a really packed schedule and we're relatively tight for time. So on that note, I'm going to move on to the first keynote speaker today. The first keynote speaker is Miss Ingrid MacDonald, who is the United Nations Resident Coordinator in Albania, and she will be discussing essentially Albania's national employment and skills strategy from 2023 to 2030. Ingrid, you have 10 minutes and the floor is yours now if you want to go ahead.
Thank you so much, and greetings from Doha. So we're here at the World Social Summit, the Second World Social Summit, and it's been really exciting. There's been lots of different panels and lots of different events, so it's wonderful to have this as one of the topics of conversation because it's extremely pertinent to everything we've been discussing here. So I think Pathways to Future Skills is also, as someone who's been a resident coordinator in now a few countries and other areas, it's one of the things that we often hear coming up from people again and again and again is really looking to the future and what sort of skills they actually need to make that transition. So this is extremely timely. I would like to first also express my sincere appreciation to the University College Dublin and to the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network, UNITAR, and the International Organization for Migration, who are really co-leading this initiative. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for including Albania. It's an honor to represent the United Nations in Albania. There's fantastic collective work that has been going on there for a long time. For those of you who don't know, Albania was one of the original 1 UN countries, and so this process of having a collective response, leveraging the expertise and the collective engagement of the United Nations has long been at the heart of our initiatives. And so we have a very strong engagement with and partnership with the Albanian government to really, and in the area, some of the areas where we focus on is in terms of strengthening education, employment and migration and governance systems, and really looking at how to ensure that transitions shape our future, the digital transformation, the green pathways in the economy, as well as demography, because we can't transitions, what's very important is that in a place like Albania that has many opportunities with the EU accession and the path that they've set for themselves and is very ambitious, it's very important as that progress happens that we we ensure that no one is left behind in those transitions. And I think this is where the power of the UN comes in and the agencies who are involved. Albania has a young and talented and ambitious population, and very hardworking. It's undergone profound economic and social transformation over the last three decades. It was at one point considered, I think, the poorest in Europe or broader Europe, if not in parts of the world. And now it is the front runner when it comes to the EU accession. That has been a massive transformation in terms of a country and a population to make. Yet, like many countries, many nations, it continues to navigate these complex realities of migration and employment, recognizing that these change a lot as well. When I think back to when I started my employment journey, we didn't even have the internet. I did everything by fax. Now you look at where we are now. And migration, I left my country to get a job overseas, and migration has changed quite significantly since that time, but these shifts remain. So for years, immigration has shaped the Albanian society, with nearly 1.7 million citizens that live abroad in search of better opportunities. Today, however, new patterns are emerging. Return migration is happening. There's growing immigration, and there's a diverse labour landscape, which is really important, which is shifting with the changes in the economy as well. Albania is no longer only a country of origin, but increasingly a country of destination and return, a crossroads of human mobility at the heart of the Western Balkans, where labour mobility, skills, and migration governance have become central to its development journey. Within this context, the National Strategy on Employment and Skills 2023 to 2030 was adopted by the government of Albania with the support from the United Nations system. It seeks to build on an economy that is based on knowledge, inclusion, and sustainability. Now, you may have seen a lot of publicity. Albania is very, very ambitious when it comes to digital transformation and AI. We even have an AI minister who sits in the cabinet, and this is a first in the world. So there's a huge amount of ambition here, and also a commitment to try and take innovation and look at where innovation can go. So it's also, though, important to align this with the National Strategy for Development Integration, which was what occurred. And this sectorial strategy focused on the core idea that investing in people's skills is the most powerful way to build resilience, competitiveness, and opportunity. It's 16 priority measures aimed to tackle skills mismatch, improve labour market functioning, strengthen worker protection, and modernise labour mobility systems. From its inception, the strategy was conceived as a guiding instrument for the country's EU accession process, ensuring that reforms in employment and skills development are fully consistent with European standards and best practices. The strategy translates the EU growth plan priorities for the Western Balkans into national action, which is very important. There's no point in having strategies and there's no point in having plans unless they actually are implemented. And this is very much an attempt to do that. The strategy aligns Albania's national qualifications framework with the European qualifications framework, allowing skills to be recognised and transferable across borders. This alignment supports fair labour mobility within the Western Balkans and European Union, ensuring that workers' qualifications travel with them and that their competencies are valued wherever they go. And for those of you who know about the European accession, this is actually central in terms of the common market and central in terms of some of the sub-regional support that is being put forward in terms of the interoperability of skills. Furthermore, it aims to strengthen education and training systems to ensure that every Albanian, especially young people, women, and vulnerable groups, can gain the future-ready skills demanded by the labour market, particularly in green and digital economies, looking to the future and looking to now. Albania's main economic sectors at the moment are services, industry, and agriculture. Now, one that is really developing a lot is tourism. It is rapidly growing part of the services sector. Through this strategy, Albania is endeavouring to modernise its vocational education and training, introducing lifelong learning paths and promoting reskilling and upskilling programs. This is not only a vital step for Albania's path to the European accession, but also one for the country where mobility, whether for study, work, or family reunification, education is a fundamental part of everyday life. It transforms migration from a challenge into an opportunity to connect skills, innovation, and capital across borders. The strategic commitment has already seen some major achievements in terms of restructuring and transformations of institutions and improvements to the legislative framework on VET and employment promotion. By 2025, significant progress has been achieved, including the rollout of the Youth Guarantee with UNDP and UNICEF support, and also at the regional level, ILO plays a very important part, and the expansion and modernisation of employment services through integrated case management and partnership and labour market ecosystems, and enhanced outreach to vulnerable groups such as economic aid beneficiaries, returning migrants, persons with disabilities, and low qualified job seekers. Additionally, it is in line with other important policies such as the National Strategy on Migration. And this strategy runs from 2024 to 2030. This was developed very much with the support of IOM, and it's really laid the groundwork for managing migration in a comprehensive manner, focusing on regular migration pathways, circular migration, protecting migrants' rights, and supporting integration, both for returning nationals but also for foreign migrants in Albania. It also echoes the commitments of the political declaration of the Second World Summit for Social Development, placing decent work, lifelong learning, and social inclusion at the centre of sustainable growth for Albania. So within the UN family in Albania, we see a powerful collaboration coming together across UN agencies. They are working more closely together, and they are working in true partnership with the government of Albania, really focusing on promoting ethical recruitment and fair labour mobility, and ensuring that migration and employment policies protect the dignity and the rights of all workers, both Albanians abroad and foreigners who now call Albania their home. What's also important is that we have broader multi-stakeholder forums as well, where we also work, of course, with workers. We work at the local level with various stakeholders, whether they're women, whether they're children, whether they're youth, whether they're different groups. And I think this is important because when you design and implement these strategies, you have to have people at the heart of it, and they need to actually be sitting there defining their own future as well. And I think that's something that the UN team works very hard on. But looking ahead, the challenges and the opportunities lie in how we scale up these good practices through multilateral and cross-sectoral partnerships. We need stronger international cooperation to develop cross-border certification frameworks so that the skill earned in Tirana can open a door in Dublin. And a qualification achieved in Pristina or Sarajevo can be recognised in Rome or Berlin. We need to make lifelong learning a right, not a privilege, accessible to women and men and young and old and migrants and locals alike. We need to ensure that digital and green transitions generate decent work that sustains livelihood, protects the environment, and builds social cohesion. This is precisely why today's dialogue is so valuable. By bringing together academia, governments, the private sector, and international organizations, we are creating pathways for future skills that can carry workers, communities, and entire economies into a more sustainable and inclusive future. So in conclusion, excellencies, colleagues, everyone who's joining us from all over the world, let me conclude with a very simple message. Investing in people is not a cost. It is a powerful form of sustainable growth. It is an investment. Albania's journey is still unfolding, but its experience shows that even a small country can have ambitious reforms, placing skills, inclusion, and mobility at the heart of development. As we look ahead, let us remember that our task is not only to prepare people for the future of work, but to ensure that the future of work is prepared for all people and that no one is left behind in terms of that journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ingrid. That was a really, really fascinating take on Albania's skills strategy. And from my point of view, from the education sector, I was particularly struck by your mention of the need for recognition of skills across borders, and particularly for nations whose economies are still developing. It's really, really crucial. So That was one of the key sort of takeaways for me. So thank you very much for that. We're going to move swiftly on in the interest of time. And our next keynote speaker is Dr. Ahmed Al-Zahrani. He's the Deputy Minister for Skills and Training in the Ministry of Human Resources and Social Development. That's in Saudi Arabia. He's also the chair of the Scientific Committee of the Global Labour Market Conference, and he will be giving a national perspective from Saudi Arabia on skills and training. Dr. Ahmed, over to you for 10 minutes, please. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Professor Murphy. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very pleased to be part of this panel. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. My name is Ahmed Al-Zahrani. I'm Deputy Minister for Skills and Training. And allow me to share my version of the story of the Deputy of Skills and Training, because it's in the heart of this topic, which is the pathway for future skills. So I'll try to recite, let's say, a story of what is the evolvement of the skill agenda in the country. And I think most of these stories will be similar to many other markets. So I will not only focus on Saudi Arabia, I'll focus also on global issues. One of the issues in the labor markets normally is most of the institutions set up, most of the programs and policies, they were set for different era. Ms. Ingrid mentioned the facts and how that evolved into using the internet and so on. I think now technology is moving faster than education. It's moving faster than labor markets, policies and other regulations. And it's very important, it's very crucial to have a place and system that, first of all, ensure responsiveness and ensure agility. So in our case in Saudi Arabia, we were lucky in 2018-19 to start what we call that time a labor market strategy. It's a reform-based strategy for the labor market. And it was the first of kind in the country where we look into the market and how we could reform the market at the national level. I was part of the drafting and formulating that strategy. It took, let's say, 18 months until it was approved. There was an important pillar called skills and training. And basically, it seeks to reduce the skill mismatch, and it seeks to establish a skill system that ensure responsiveness. So under that pillar, immediately after the labor market strategy was approved by the Council of Ministers in December 2020, immediately the ministry started saying, okay, this is serious now matter. We are saying we want to lead when it comes to the skills at the national level. And from our experience, you can't, no single entity or a person can lead this effort without coordinating with everyone, without this, what we call multi-stakeholder engagement. So we established an initiative under this strategy called Skills and Occupation Planning. Under that, there is a setup of sector skill councils and occupational standards. Basically, we have a philosophy to move from a skill, let's say, a supply-based approach to skills to more of a demand-driven approach to skills, which means we need to work with the employers to identify the requirement of the occupations, the requirement of skills. Then we coordinate with everybody. So immediately we set up this deputy, and I started as one person in 2021. We grew now to 50 people working with me in my department. We run around 30 programs, and we are continuing and we're growing. We're still growing. Basically, I'm going back to the objective. First objective is to move to a demand-driven approach. Second objective is to facilitate skill-based organization or skill-based labor market. We know traditionally in the Saudi labor market, like many other markets, it's a qualification-based. So based on your degree and your qualification, you should be matched to a specific type of occupation. So the decision to employment, decision of wage setting and career progression depends on your qualification. And this creates a problem in the market when it comes to the mismatch, to productivity, to underutilization of workforce, and more importantly, the dynamics in the labor market. Qualification cannot always, be the solution to that. So we set up the Sector Skill Council. Now we operate 15 Sector Skill Council with 250 members from the private sector and from line ministries. Why? Because we want to ensure the multi-stakeholder approach to skilling. Immediately, we went to identify skills. We produced national skill framework and sector skill framework, and we produced now Saudi skill taxonomy that includes 10,000 skills matched with the occupations. So this is the first part when it comes to the planning activities. Immediately now, we launched also a national skill platform where we create skill record, or what do we call a skill passport for individuals. So skills and competences of individuals are assessed and vetted and validated, and it's readable by the employers. Why? We want to support the employers, how they could look to their to the individuals beyond qualification, and how they could look into competences and skills. And we know one of the issues when it comes to this domain is the signaling. Who signal to the employers what kind of competences this individual has? So that's why we try to fulfill that through our skill platform, national skill platform, which we launched last week, by the way, officially. Among that, we run so many other initiatives. I don't want to talk much about those initiatives, but at the national level, we, in coordination with 5 other ministries and with the Human Capability Development Program, which is a vision program, we launch Skill Accelerator, where we accelerate 300,000 private sector employees. We realize, okay, as much as we do in the government, still most of the responsibility should come from the private sector. So we launched a national campaign for training where we want to raise awareness with the private sector. We are working with around 70 partners from the private sector where they pledge X number of training opportunities, whether to their employees or students or job seekers. And basically, we want the training activities at the firm level to be active and visible. And with that, we reached 4.5 million training opportunities until 2028. We finished the first stage, which was 1.5 million, and we already achieved that half-time. So that's why we extend to the second stage. All in all, it's 4.5 million training opportunities. And as a ministry, we only facilitate it and track it and help matching individuals with training opportunities that come from the private sector. Also, this is also maybe very important to mention. We think what we try to achieve here in Saudi through the labor market strategy, which evidently have achieved tremendous success. For example, when we started the labor market strategy, female participation used to be around 17%. Now it's 36% in the matter of 7 to 8 years. Unemployment rate for locals used to be 13%, now is around 6%, among many other indicators like participation rate and so on. So there is a success. So that's why the ministry thought, okay, we share these challenges and we share these activities and opportunities with the rest of the world. So that's why we decided to launch what we call a Global Labor Market Conference. It's an international platform where governments, CEOs, academia, and practitioners come together to discuss labor market issues and dynamics. We run now 2 versions. The last version last year, more than 10,000 people attended, more than 45 labor ministers attended, and we think it's a great platform where we share our ideas and experience and learn from each other on the basis of what works, what doesn't. What do we think we have now in the skills? I think we are leading in the region and in the rest of the world when it comes to skill-based organization and skill-based labor market. We are very happy for everyone if they have a question or would like to visit our national skill platform to learn more about our initiatives and our challenges also. I hope I'm not taking much, Professor Murphy, and back to you. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Dr. Al-Razani. That is really fascinating overview again of the Saudi situation. I suppose one of the things that struck me from your talk was that you have moved very much from the supply side to demand side in relation to trying to address skills shortages, and that's actually really interesting because it gets really to the nub of the issue, I suppose, in relation to the potential productivity of the labor force for the economy. And also the extensive stakeholder consultations, the scale of the consultations that have gone in with various stakeholders on that national skills base is incredible. I think you mentioned more than 250 stakeholders. So it's the scale of it is quite extensive, and it's a really good example again of this need for multi-stakeholder participation in addressing labor market need and skills deficits. So thank you again. For your speech. At this point, we have now actually concluded our keynote section, and I want to thank Ms. Ingrid McDonald and also Dr. Al-Zahrani as well for their contributions. You are welcome to stay on for the panel discussion and take questions if your time and schedules allow, but if not, that's also okay, and we'd like to thank you at this point for your contribution. We're going to move on to the second segment now of this particular session, and the second segment is really this panel discussion that we've organized on multi-stakeholder solutions for a sustainable and inclusive labour market for all. So we're moving on to discuss solutions in that regard. I should say that in relation to this panel discussion, that it is essentially a follow-up from a similar discussion that we had from EU Green Week, a side event for EU Green Week that we held on the 12th of June, which was titled Pathways to a Circular Economy. And actually one of the key messages that emerged from that particular session was the importance of multi-stakeholder cooperation between policymakers, industry and educators. And what we're trying to do today is to actually share, first of all, I suppose, to move from a European to a more global perspective, but also to highlight more very specific practical solution-based approaches towards addressing labour market need and skills shortages for sustainability. And in that regard, I think we will move straight in, I think, to our opening session. So I think our opening speaker is Professor Paul Walsh. Is Paul here yet?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me good?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. And Professor Paul Walsh is a Vice President of Education for SDSN. He's also Professor in the School of Politics and International Relations at my own university, University College Dublin. Paul's going to be speaking on the Capabilities for Change Future Hope project. So Paul, over to you now for your 10 minutes, please. Thanks.
It's a joy to be here. So greetings from the World Social Summit. I'm actually sitting beside Ingrid. I don't think she realizes that we're on the same webinar. Saying hello. So I want to talk about an initiative by UNIDO, UNITAR and SDSN called Capabilities for the Future. So I don't know, you could share my slides. So to start off with, UNIDO is responsible for SDG 9. Next slide. And it is worth going through some of the objectives of SDG 9. It's probably not the goal that people look at a lot, but obviously UNIDO has this objective of making global supply chains inclusive and sustainable economic development by 2030. And of course, that deadline is coming up very fast. But one of the things that you would see very much across these goals in terms of infrastructures, in terms of training SMEs, in terms of capabilities, it is actually across country. And one of the things that what I want to show with capabilities for the future is that, next slide. Next slide. I'm going to do a shorter version. You know, when you look at global GDP, over time, supply chains, our products and services have emerged to be actually quite concentrated into the ownership of a few companies. And this was predicted in a paper by my supervisor in London School of Economics called John Sutton and Shackett in 1983 in an econometrica paper. It's a game theory paper called Natural Oligopolies. But basically, I'm not going to go through the three-stage game, but what I'm going to tell you is that when companies compete on price and non-price aspects, that you will see not just an escalation of price competition, but you would see an escalation in non-price competition in these non-price. So this could be R&D or technical aspects of cars or phones, or maybe just some value to particular fashion or handbags and perfumes and so on. But once you have an escalation in sunk cost or non-price competition, next slide, you can expect this theorem to hold. And what it basically holds says is that no matter how much distribution of income there is across households of the world, from low income to high income, you could think of global south to global north, that, you know, you will actually see a movement towards the concentration of industry into a high, what we call C4, C5, meaning that only 3 or 4 companies actually dominate each product and service. And this is, and this is irrespective of how big the global market gets or how unequal income distributions occur, right? And this is the problem that we're having in global supply chains, is that there is a bit of a race to the bottom. So we are aware of countries competing on tax, for example, in terms of global supply chains, but also we are what we may be not so aware of is that a lot of supply chains actually compete on social protection, environmental protection, meaning they will actually go and source things at the lowest cost, or they might actually get natural resources from places, you know, where environmental protection is low or societal protection is low, etc. So there is a kind of an argument that global supply chains at the moment, even though they're driving global GDP, they are the epicenters of environmental degradation, and they actually drive so much of the social inequality across the world. Next slide. So how do you fix this? Well, if we did have some global authority for competition and regulation, maybe there's some chance of fixing it. But our best chance is, this is following Stiglitz globalization and disconnects, is that we do have to work with decentralized member states. And one thing we're putting forward is the idea of coordinated industrial policy, right? So basically allowing competition across nations and supply chains, but we do have to put in some safeguards or social protection floors, or we have to put in some boundaries that say try and stay within planetary boundaries in our use of nature as a source of a sink. Other things could be like global tariffs. So when Trump is increasing his tariffs, we could increase his, but we'd only put tariffs up on goods and services that are not green, for example, or don't have DEI, you know, just to make an example. The next slide. To give the origin of where this came from, so UNIDO in the chair with SDSN and UNITAR, we were part of a thing called SDG Learn. So like the SDG Academy puts all our training courses in there, as does UNITAR and the UN Staff Training College, as other UN agencies. But there's very few courses on labor market or training, or let's say SDG 9, or you're dealing with corporates or SMEs. So we decided we had a task force for business, basically, SDGs for business. And this is what we came up with, which I'm just going to describe now, which is capabilities for the future hub. The basic idea here is that there is what's called an industrial policy coordination committee in UNIDO. And the idea is that countries across supply chains should be coordinating to actually create, to internalize any damage on nature and society. And also, and in doing this, obviously, there has to be capabilities. There has to be training of public servants themselves and the industrial agencies, but also then there should be free resources for multinationals and particularly small and medium enterprises that they can upskill and train on digital and green skills so that they can actually internalize these potential negative externalities on society and nature. Of course, the idea is free training, free open education resources, free vocational and academic certification, which is actually standardized across the supply chain to make this labor market, if you like, and workers very, very flexible, but also the SMEs and companies that have this capability to actually transform these global supply chains into epicenter of sustainable development rather than the opposite. Next slide. So we're going to play a video which explains it better than me. So we'll do that.
The world is undergoing significant transformations. Global value chains are being reshaped, driven by renewable energy, digital and demographic transitions, global rebalancing, and new regulations in different countries or regions. Real economy needs to restructure. Financing solutions need to incentivize these shifts. Market forces cannot do this alone. Policies and regulations have to support these transformations, give a sense of direction, and create incentives for private sector innovations. However, if each country starts doing it on its own, regulatory and policy misalignment will stifle progress. As economies transition, there will be trade-offs and costs in the short run. Countries will tend to compete for offering easy solutions and shifting negative effects outside of their jurisdictions. Another race to the bottom and negative consequences for countries with less capacities must be avoided. To this end, UNIDO called for new era industrial policies to achieve the SDGs. A major gap in capacities must be addressed. For policymakers, to design and coordinate industrial policies for greener and more inclusive transitions. For business, to develop new business strategies and models. For vocational education, to provide relevant learning for sustainable jobs. For academia, to offer quicker, flexible and action-oriented learning pathways. There is expertise spread across multiple networks, actors and countries. We must connect the dots across different partners and regions. Some relevant learning is already available, but the offer is fragmented. We need a more strategic approach to capacity building. Capabilities for the Future Hub will help connect the dots, partners and countries within and across regions. The aim is to enable all to pool their expertise and fast-track progress, in particular for those with less resources. We should start with policymakers to ensure SDG-aligned industrial and regulatory policy. The efforts across the private sector and education should align. Foundational learning should be built out with industry-specific offers with variations for regions. This could only emerge out of collaborations. The Hub will contribute to cohesive national industrial policies, learning strategies, and multilateral coordination. For the Hub to go live, we need UN member states' mandates and voluntary contributions, and more business and education players with knowledge, learning resources and funding for this global public good. Join us.
So, okay, I'll leave it there, and we put up our social media handles, and it's a joy to be listening to the Labour Market Conference is very exciting in particular, and I'm going to look forward to the rest of the talks.
Great, thank you very much, Paul. Again, that was very interesting, and especially the maths slides, they're really interesting. But I mean, the thing that I was struck by was the need essentially to start internalizing environmental and social costs of supply chain, essentially a destruction, which is really important. So thank you very much for that. We're going to move swiftly on to our next speaker in the interest of time, and our next speaker is Maria Nakova. Maria is the project leader of the BuildSkills Academy. She's also head of Digital Innovation Hub and Construction and manager of strategic development at Clean Tech Bulgaria. Maria, the floor is yours for 10 minutes. Thanks.
Hello from my side. Thank you very much for being here. Indeed, it starts so inspiring that it is always really nice to speak after those before. But indeed, I feel very much enthusiastic to share what we have done, because I believe that it answers the main question regarding how to achieve this recognition. Stepping on all the speakers, the forthcoming speakers, indeed, it is only one thing that we need to invest in. Let me just share my presentation now. Just a second, I have some, always the risk of the live. Isabella, could you please help me with sharing my presentation? Sorry, I have some technical issues. Thank you very much. I much appreciate. I will present what we have done, of course, starting from the European level. Next slide, please. We are speaking on sectors-based learning and skills. Indeed, we tried with one of the most important and structural defining sectors in the European economy, and it is the construction sector. It generates approximately 10 to 12% of the total European GDP. And in this regard, it is crucial in order to support the restructuring of its way of working. So we're trying to find a new approach to skills in construction, stepping on the needs to tackle environmental, social, and economic challenges, identify holistic vision on cities development, incorporation of expertise, transform urban landscapes in a resilient and sustainable way, and also secure the well-being of citizens. Europe invests a lot of efforts on creating the relevant legislative and normative way in order to support the implementation of this. Next slide, please. And since the last several months and since the beginning of this year, there is a new European strategy based on the so-called Union of Skills. This is a new policy that promotes the way how we need to change the education, training, and of course, to create market-related skills, bringing together all the different stakeholders. It is the other keyword from all the four speakers, aiming to achieve regular reskilling and upskilling. The European Commission has stated the very highest vision of annually reskilling of at least 60% of the adult generation. Indeed, hearing from the examples from Saudi Arabia and also from Albania, it is also a global aim that, of course, together with the team of SDSN, we're trying to further support. Next slide, please. The Union of Skills is mainly focused on data-driven policies, lifelong learning as a norm, because we need to identify flexible, modular, and really close to industry short-term paths for reskilling and upskilling. And of course, it starts with the keyword micro-credentials, but also the different pact for different sector-based skills, skills guarantees, which is indeed the way how we can make the skills transferable. And I was really surprised and really interested in what Dr. Al-Zaharani shared regarding their platform and the fact that they have already started this in the Saudi area. We're doing this in Europe also, trying to find a way how to motivate different learners to be more proactive and of course to be more vet and sectoral related. Next slide, please. The Union of Skills aims at increasing the mobility and of course the recognition of skills in the single market, thus via several initiatives such as skills portability initiatives, European degree, new European vet diploma, But again, I believe that this is the first step that will then be globally recognized. A stronger and more attractive vet sector is the new European strategy for vet. And also, the same as in Saudi Arabia, it always starts with the money and finding the appropriate funding for this. Next slide, please. It is the very crucial strategy that focus on the role of that in supporting EU competitiveness and innovation, economic, territorial, and social cohesion, thus ensuring inclusiveness, excellence to all the different groups from different domains. And of course, this is the aim of having a global solution to the problems with significant skills gaps and lack of workforce in Europe. Next slide, please. One additional insight from mid-September this year is the hearing declaration that is focusing on enhancing the attractiveness, quality, and inclusiveness of vets, promoting esteem and very, very direct innovation in education, but also linking it quietly to the practical aspects, aligning that with labor market demands, addressing skills shortages, and fostering social fairness. And of course, promoting innovation, excellence, and well-being. So the twin transition will become from the reskilled and upskilled workforce. Next slide. Stepping on all this, we have created our Center of Vocational Excellence, the BuildSkills Academy, that unites 17 partners from 10 different countries, including 7 EU members and also countries outside of the EU. The aim of our Center of Vocational Excellence is to revolutionize the construction sector by addressing the challenges of the twin transition, identifying and integrating the missing green and digital skills, and also, the most important thing, creating a pan-European framework for certification of transitional skills, with, of course, the ambition to enlarge it in other sectors, but also globally. Next slide, please. What we're doing, stepping on a list of skills and competencies from different occupations and EQF levels created based on the taxonomy of green and digital skills of vet school, and on a quality assurance process for the enriched vet courses, we have updated and adapted vet services offered to the emerging new needs of green and digital skills. We have created, and I'm really happy to share the launch of our Build and Rich Skills methodology and the digital platform for self-assessment of the needs, how to enrich courses. We offer trainings, and we're starting now through our 12 pilot courses. And then the most important part, will develop a certification framework to represent umbrella certifications for recognition and validation of courses and content for transitional skills and competences. Next slide, please. This is, you can, via the QR code, and here is the link, you can find our BuildSkills platform. It's really very, very useful, accessible to everyone. It is in English, and you can try it. Next slide, please. I will, of course, then share the slides if needed. The methodology is based on the self-assessment, as I've mentioned, but also you can upload any course related to the construction sector, and it supports you by a report on the missing green and digital skills in what you are proposing in your curricula. It has a digital platform that supports each vet provider in identifying the skill gaps, guiding the vet providers through a step-by-step process to enrich their courses, and of course, create a tailor-made report providing guidelines for course enrichments, innovative teaching techniques and tools, assessment methods, and also good practices, thus ensuring peer learning. We have a handbook and video, of course, to assist users, and quite a useful library and material repository. So I strongly recommend to visit the platform and to try it by yourself, because of course it is based on the European good practices, but I believe that it can be without any hesitations used worldwide. Next slide, please. What is the most important and the cherry on top of the cake of what we are doing is our certification system, because stepping on this pilot phase, creating the methodology and then piloting the courses, we're aiming at having 3 different types of certification. Certification for curriculum and training materials. This will be done based on the pilot application of the courses. Then we will have certification schemes for individuals, which is a pilot application for certification of the trainees that has successfully completed the courses. And of course, certification framework for transitional skills and competencies, which will be nice guidelines on how to create certification schemes for individuals from various professions. Next slide, please. And of course, thus we are again ensuring inclusiveness, excellence in all this, because in our platform there is shared value for all, for educational and training providers, for industrial representatives, strategic high-level organizations, and of course, other centers of vocational excellence to ensure the peer learning and good practices exchange. And last but not least from my side, next slide, please. I would like to share the master classes that will be held next year. Of course, we will share information to all of you. There will be 3 master classes organized in hybrid mode in Brussels, Belgium, regarding the Pact for Skills and New Skills driving the twin transition. In Italy, on a sustainable, on how to stimulate the interest of young people for tackling career in construction, and on sustainable construction that will impact the future sector, which will be held, of course, again, hybrid, physical in Berlin and online. So a lot more to come, and a lot have already been achieved. They follow us, and I'm really happy to share more information and insights on how you can use the results that we have achieved. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maria. And again, I'm really struck actually by the link between your presentation and that of Ingrid MacDonald, and particularly, she mentioned the need for recognition across borders of qualifications. And I think that's something you're also advocating for through BuildSkills Academy and the pan-European recognition of skills, which is really, really important. But also the practical solutions, the lifelong learning aspect is really, really important for I suppose, for upskilling and reskilling into the future for sustainable development. So thank you very much for those important insights. I just say to the audience that's here as well, we will have time for maybe 2 or 3 questions at the end. So if there's any burning questions that you want to ask, please put them in the chat and we can perhaps ask them at the end of our panel. So we will move swiftly on. Our next speaker is Tanya Dedovich. Tanya is Regional Thematic Specialist on Labour Market Mobility in MENA at the International Organization for Migration. Tanya, you have 10 minutes and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And I am just going to upload my presentation. Can you confirm that you can see my slides? Yes, excellent. So I want to, first of all, I want to start by thanking the Sustainable Development Solution Network colleagues for inviting us to speak on skills mobility partnerships. This is a concept that IOM has developed in the framework of the Global Compact on Migration, because as we have heard from several speakers, it is of utmost importance to invest in skills and to allow people with these skills to actually also move where these skills are needed. And so why we are talking about
Tanya, you are on mute.
Can you hear me again?
We can now, yeah. Go ahead.
Yes. So why we are talking about skills mobility partnerships, I think some of the speakers have already talked about the need. And in the coming years, we see that there is an immense need for skilled workers, whether it's in the health sector or the teachers or the green jobs, or in the construction sector. We have also just heard the presentation from Maria. So with this needs in mind, and on the other hand, we are looking at, for example, Africa as a continent which will have a youthful workforce. There is a real potential that countries with such a youthful population, we have also heard from Albania, that they can actually provide that skilled workforce. But what is needed, and that was mentioned by Ingrid, and I think also we have heard from the government of KSA, what is really important is that investment in skills development. And that is what we want to achieve with skills mobility partnerships. You can see that from the 5 features that are basically essential in any skills mobility partnership, the central one is the training. And it is really a very distinctive feature of skills mobility partnerships that this training is happening in the countries of origin. So first, it's the countries of origin that will benefit from that skills development. And if you think about green skills, I think it becomes even more comprehensible. It becomes more easy to understand how skills mobility partnerships will really benefit both sides, the countries of origin and the countries of destination that engage in such a partnership, because green skills are skills for now that are really demanded everywhere. The green transition has to happen everywhere if we want to achieve our climate goals. So it is very important that the skills development is happening in the countries of origin, creating a skilled workforce, a green skilled workforce, whether it's renewable energies, whether it's waste management, whether it's in the area of agriculture, and then the countries of destination who are co-investing in these kind of skills mobility partnerships, they can then also recruit from that skilled workforce. So every skills mobility partnership has 8 essential elements, and I will just briefly go through them, because I think they cover some important aspects that we have also heard from the presentations of my predecessors. So I'm basically just picking up on some of the points that you have already made. But the beginning or the basis for a skills mobility partnership is, of course, to know what are the labor market needs. So we are also very much following a demand driven approach here, because we do not train people and then look for the jobs for them, but we want to know what are the skills needs of the private sector in the countries of origin, in the countries of destination. And then we start with the long and midterm planning for skills mobility partnerships. Because why long and midterm? Because in many cases, and again, in green skills, it is even maybe easier to see, we do not have necessarily the training programs already in place to train people on these skills. So in some areas, we might have to invest, first of all, in the development of the training program so that we can start building a skilled workforce. Another very important point, even the topic of our discussion today, is the multi-stakeholder approach. And in a skills mobility partnership, where we have to think about the labor market needs, where we have to think about the trainings and those who can provide the trainings, if we have to think about the employers, if we have to think about those that are then allowing and putting in place, let's say, the migration governance framework, the visa schemes that one has to have in place to allow for that skills-based labor mobility, you can already see that a skills mobility partnership would not work without this multi-stakeholder approach. The local development and job creation comes from the fact that the training is happening in the countries of origin to increase the productivity of a country of origin in a given sector. Let's take, for example, let's stick with our topic, the green skills. A country of origin will benefit from a skills mobility partnership because they will have a skilled workforce, for example, in waste management or in the production of green hydrogen. That country, because of a skilled workforce, will also be more competitive. It will even be able to possibly attract foreign direct investment because they have a skilled workforce. And in that sense, skills mobility partnership can contribute to local development, can contribute to job creation, and can ultimately contribute to SDG 10, which is reducing inequalities. We have heard a lot about skills classification and skills recognition, and I was really excited to hear Maria talk about pan-European certification for construction. Maybe next thing we can think about pan-European recognition for green skills, so that people who will be trained, for example, in North Africa on green skills will be able to take up jobs across the EU with the same kind of certificate, not having to have a specific certificate that's either recognized by German employers or by Italian employers or Spanish or French employers. A skills mobility partnership is very much about concerned with social aspects of that mobility of those that will move, because as you can also already understand from my presentation, not everyone that is being trained will move. We have one track for the home labor market, and we have a so-called away track for those that will actually take up jobs in other countries. And those who will move, we want them to move safely. We want them to move orderly. We want them to move regularly. And that means we are sending them through ethical recruitment, and we ensure that during migration, their migrant rights are protected, including social protection. We are concerned, as always, about portability of social benefits so that those who do migrate, they can actually benefit from this migration, and their countries of origin can benefit from this migration, even if those who migrate will not necessarily return, but they can still contribute to the country of origin with their not only financial resources, but maybe even more so with their human capital and with their social capital, helping to build transnational partnerships, transnational enterprises. Obviously, we need to talk about migration procedures. We need to look at the policy and also the legal frameworks that will allow or rather be an obstacle to skills-based labor mobility. And I think here there are, especially in the Gulf, some very, very interesting and very innovative ideas that are being discussed on how to attract and how to retain green skills in particular, because the Gulf countries have, just like the EU, maybe not an EU Green Deal, but all of the countries have very ambitious visions and strategies for 2030 and beyond, and they are all about green and the digital transition. So for that purpose, a lot of the migration governance has been reformed and has been aligned to be attractive and to be able to retain these type of green skills. So indeed, a lot to learn, as Mr. Al-Sahani was saying, from the KSA. And if you just allow me a little side remark, during the last Global Labor Market Conference, I have heard over and over again about the need to invest in skills, and how important it is that this development of skills needs to be very flexible. It needs to be very adaptable. It needs to follow the fast developments in the private sector. And so what I took from this Global Labor Market Conference last time was micro-credentials, working with micro-credentials. And that is exactly what we are also doing in skills mobility partnerships. And the last point, but definitely not the least important point in a skills mobility partnership is, how do you finance this? Because it cannot only be funded by private sector, it cannot only be funded by government, and it can also not be funded only by development funding. It will actually need a new model, probably of blended funding, blended finance. And when we talk about green skills, I think we can also look at climate finance to ensure that all of these different sources of potential funding can work together to achieve what you were talking about, Paul, like this global policy change that you are working on in this initiative, Capacities for the Future. So maybe I did not need necessarily 10 minutes, but I think those were the main key messages I wanted to share with this esteemed panel and with our audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tanya. And again, some really fantastic insights there. And for me in particular, these 8 essential elements of skilled mobility partnerships, I think that they're really provide an important framework for understanding what's required in a labour market sense for skills of the present and skills of the future, I think, for sustainability. So thank you very much for that. We move on to our next speaker, and our next speaker is Christiana Theru she's the Executive Director of the Global Labour Market Conference. So Christiana, you have 10 minutes and the floor is now yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor Murphy. Thank you very much for the invitation to the SDSN Academy. And thank you to my fellow panelists. The Global Labor Market Conference was mentioned and referenced quite a few times during this, this panel, which also speaks to the connectivity that we bring together. Isabella, if I may please ask for your support in sharing the presentation, because I'm having a few technical difficulties. Thank you very much. As mentioned by Dr. Zahrani during his keynote, the Global Labor Market Conference was indeed, is in fact an initiative of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia towards the world, the global labor market world, and bringing together all key stakeholders. Next slide, please. What is the global labor market, or the GLMC as we refer to it, and you will also see it referenced throughout the rest of the presentation. It's a global platform shaping the future of labor markets through inclusive dialogue, knowledge exchange, and tangible innovation. It launched in 2023 as a global conference to reimagine the future of labor. Its success, however, revealed a much deeper need for continuous collaborative dialogue around labor market challenges. Today, GLMC operates as an integrated platform powered by 3 key pillars: the annual high-level conference, ongoing research and outcomes reports, and the GLMC Labor Market Academy, which we'll speak more about shortly. We wanted to share a little bit of information regarding why the GLMC is actually so important and what makes it important. The numbers speak for themselves. In our 2nd edition alone, we had over 10,000 attendees from across 100 ministers of labor, over 186 speakers covering 50 sessions across the 2 days of the event. Memorandums of understanding and agreements that were signed were 70, benefiting over 300,000 people in the kingdom alone. The Kingdom is the one we can measure. There were also international MOUs signed, and of course bilateral meetings, both on a government level, but also on a peer-to-peer private sector level as well. Next slide, please. Our most important driver at the GLMC is impact. During the flagship event in Riyadh in January, during the second edition that took place in 2025, 38 international ministers of labor joined together for a ministerial roundtable discussion that focused on youth unemployment and technological advancements. At the conclusion of the meeting, the Global Labor Charter of 8 decisive actions was unveiled, offering a comprehensive vision to enhance the flexibility, inclusiveness, and sustainability of labor markets around the world. Key actions outlined in the Charter include facilitating youth transitions from education to employment, equipping the workforce for the AI-driven era, and investing in human capital through skilled and reskilling initiatives, to name but a few. One of the most important impact-driven initiatives launched by GLMC, however, is the Global Labor Market Academy. Next slide, please. The Global Labor Market Academy was launched alongside the second edition of GLMC in January this year, and is a joint initiative of the GLMC, the World Bank, and the Ministry of Human Resources and Social Development of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. It's a global knowledge and peer learning platform on labor market policy with the goal of reaching 75 countries and 600 participants over a period of 3 years. Next slide, please. It is a structured year-long capacity building journey. As you can see, we start with the cohort registration. We're sharing the journey of the academy that just basically completed. Cohort registration started in September of 2024. We had the launch event and the first session in Riyadh in January of 2025. There was a series of site visits as well. Then we had the participant presentations in the policy labs. There's peer-to-peer learning. Then we moved on to the second session in Paris, and we lead on to graduation in Riyadh. And it's very much a peer-to-peer exchange. It fosters knowledge exchange between countries, leveraging the expertise of the World Bank and the GLMC network. It equips policymakers and practitioners with practical tools and evidence-based strategies to address today's most pressing employment challenges. With ongoing efforts to strengthen international partnerships and develop effective labor market strategies, the Academy representing leaders in making a positive impact at the policy level to promote sustainable development. As I mentioned earlier, in sharing this journey, each year we have 2 classroom sessions that are delivered. The introductory edition in Riyadh each January, held on the sidelines of GLMC main conference, and an advanced edition in Paris at the end of October. We just hosted the second session of the class of 2025 just last week. The interesting element now is that this is not just about 2 sessions that take place over a period of a year. It is further enhanced by the global cohort model. Next slide, please. The LMA Global Cohort Model is an opportunity for each participants that join us for the first session every year, which is the Riyadh Academy, to apply to become part of the GLMC Labor Market Academy cohort class. How does this work? So basically, all of the participants of the session are invited to apply to the cohort model by submitting and presenting national flagship programs during the Advanced Academy session in October. So basically, they apply in January alongside the first session of the year. And then during the year, there are a number of virtual sessions that support each of the participants towards formalizing their presentation, their documentation, and it's basically presenting case studies around their newly developed and evolved labor market policies. And this is where our real value add is. So the participants get a chance to showcase their work before a global audience at the flagship event in Riyadh. So for example, we had 17 participating countries in Paris presenting their country case studies. Out of these 17 countries, a special dedicated committee will be selecting 7 case studies that will present at the GLMC 3rd edition in Riyadh in January, alongside the policy labs that are hosted in partnership with the World Bank. They engage in peer-to-peer learning exchanges across multiple events, forming lasting professional networks, and they also become permanent members of the Labor Market Academy community, sustaining knowledge exchange beyond the 3-year program cycle. So our objective is basically all of the participants of this cohort model to be building year on year. So really we create an academy of knowledge when it comes to policy making within labor markets. Next slide, please. Thank you. So we are a truly global community of learning. Excuse me. The class of 2025, which just concluded a few days ago, boasts 34 participating countries across the world, as you can see on the map. And we are very excited because we will be hosting these participants in Riyadh in January for the graduation ceremony of the class of 2025. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, Christiana. And again, that was a very insightful speech, and again, provided us with a lot of really interesting information. And in particular, the Global Labour Market Conference seems like a really fantastic forum to be able to discuss labour market issues on a multilateral scale. And I think that there's a real gap there that's being filled by the provision of not only that initiative, but all of the MOUs and so on that have emerged from that. So that's very interesting to see, and thank you very much for that. I suppose we're all finished now with our main sections, and thank you all of our panelists, our 4 panelists, for your wonderful speeches. We have time for a few questions. We don't have that many questions directly from the floor. But what I wanted to ask the panel, and anyone can feel free to answer this question, is really, I suppose from my perspective, when I listen to all of your speeches, one of the key issues for me that emerges in relation to thinking about future skills is that what's required for sustainability in particular in the future is major transformational change, and that will perhaps lead to labour market ruptures that we don't really know the extent of, and we don't know yet actually what the skills needs will be, probably a decade even from now. So how do you think we can prepare for that in some specific way, either through your own initiatives or through other visionary initiatives? Anyone want to take that one on? Paul.
So after 3 long days in the World Social Summit, that's not an easy question. But I guess just to talk about Agion and how it obviously won the Nobel Prize in Economics a couple of weeks ago on Schumpeterian waves or creative destruction. And this, one of my feelings is that at the end of the day, we want to empower a very flexible labor market and empower workers and young people and in the skills of the future. But, unlike it is going to be the government in a sense that's going to, our governments have to be the ones in their regulatory frameworks to put the guardrails, if you like, on the economic system, and in the sense that, you want to protect nature and you want to protect people, across all the different labor markets. So I do think there is a responsibility of government in particular to be, push the transformation, which is going to be disruptive, and you are going to get winners and losers. But the key is that workers, and particularly young people, are very flexible and agile in the skills that they have, and they can be mobile. and not just, you know, across sectors in a country, but across countries. And I think that's the key thing that everyone is talking about here. But governments, you know, they have to understand that the damage created by runaway climate change and runaway social inequality to business and to labor markets is far worse than any damage they'll create from disruptive regulatory policies that will clearly, you know, transform, hopefully, products and services that are respectful to people and planet. But whether induced by nature, or whether induced by policy, or whether induced by technology, your best chance of surviving any of these shocks is flexible labor market, and to make sure there's agility in young and older workers in their digital and green skills.
Great, thanks, Paul. That's very interesting. Tanya also has her hand up, and then Maria. Tanya.
Yeah, maybe more coming from the practitioner side, if you want. I fully agree with you, Patrick. Governments need to put the regulatory frameworks in place. And I would emphasize that it's governments in both countries of origin and countries of destination. Yeah? There is a shared responsibility to put these legal and policy frameworks in place to allow for that flexibility that you were talking, to allow for that mobility of skills, but I would still emphasize the importance of private sector as well, because in pretty much all of the skills mobility partnerships that we have put in place so far, they have all been triggered by the demand of the private sector. So I think in order to prepare, to answer your question, Enda, how do we prepare for the future? How do we know what are the skills needed in the future? And to always be sort of on top of this transformation that is happening as we speak. I think you heard actually also from Mr. Al-Sahani how the government of Saudi Arabia is trying to keep their ear really close to what's happening in the private sector by putting in place these sectoral skills councils. I think that is one way how you can be sure that you remain in constant communication with private sector. And in those sectoral skills councils that we see, you have usually always government and private sector together, and the trade unions as well. Yeah? So I think to understand what are the skills needs, you need to listen to the private sector to make sure that those demands from private sector will remain within our planetary boundaries. As Patrick was mentioning, you need the governments to put the regulatory frameworks in place.
Thank you, Tanya. And yeah, that's very interesting. Maria?
Yeah, I just want to add on what was already shared, that it is, you know, everything is very fast now. We don't have even times for regulation. Europe, unfortunately, right now is stepping a little bit back because we try to regulate too much. I believe that it is the business-driven solutions, and that's why what we are discussing, and it is incorporated in each and every speaker's words, how to make this work as a recognition. So we need to invest efforts in identifying very fast recognition tools, a kind of a group of experts that can easily validate, because at least it is expected that more than 55% of the current positions in the next 10 years will be non-existing looking from today. So it will be completely new jobs with completely new requirements. And of course, with the deployment of new technologies, we need to be extremely fast. We cannot continue working in linear mode. We need to become more proactive. So I believe that all the examples given today should be focused on validating as mechanism on how to recognize what we know. And of course, it is always the business that is faster than the government.
Thank you, Maria. And that's, again, yeah, really interesting contribution. I think all of those points are really important. Christiane, I'm not sure if you wanted to come in on the end for a final word.
No, actually, my fellow panelists have covered all elements. And from the, let's say, angle of Saudi Arabia, I believe Dr. Zahrani has given a very comprehensive presentation on that front. I think we all recognize the elements and the key issues. And for us, especially here in the Kingdom, where we have one eye on, of course, the local labor markets, but also on the global labor markets through the GLMC, the focus is basically, I think we're heading in the right direction.
Thanks, Christiana. Okay, so we are coming close to time, and so my job as moderator apparently is to sum up with a few key takeaways. So I suppose I'll sum up with a few of the key takeaways that I've had from all of the speakers. And I think, bearing in mind the theme that we're discussing here, pathways to future skills for sustainable, inclusive labor market for all. One key takeaway that I have from it, I suppose, is that a multi-stakeholder approach is really crucial for addressing skills in the present and also into the future. And that includes things like financing that was mentioned as well, including blended financing. The second thing for me is that I think a number of people mentioned that it's really important that no one's left behind. And in particular, if we have a major, which we are having to an extent, a major rupture in the labor market, particularly on the digital skills end, and if we have more transformational change in the future, the importance of no one being left behind is really, really crucial. The third key takeaway for me is this issue of skills recognition across borders, of cross-border recognition of skills, so that workers, that people, individuals who are searching for livelihoods are not disadvantaged simply because of where they were born or where they did their training. And then the fourth sort of key takeaway for me is that there's a real sense that cooperation, multi-stakeholder cooperation, but also multilateral cooperation is really, really important for addressing some of the skills challenges that we will have into the future. And this brings to the fore, I suppose, the role of the government and major multilateral institutions like the UN and so on, but also the stakeholders that feed into governments, such as the private sector, and also in particular as well unions as well and workers. So I think that's my 4 or 5 key takeaways that I have gotten from today. So I think we will sort of leave it there, but before we go and finish the session, I would like to thank all the speakers. I won't read all your names out again because it will take an extra couple of minutes, but I would like to thank our 2 keynotes very, very much. And I would like to thank our 4 panelists for doing a really excellent job and providing such wonderful expertise and fantastic insights into labour market change for sustainable development into the future. I'd also like to thank our hosts, UCD, SDSM, IOM, and of course UNITAR as well as the World Social Forum for providing us with the platform to have this particular discussion. So I think we'll leave it all there, and thank you all for attending in particular. It's really wonderful to have 50 to 60 people here on this particular call, and we hope you all found it useful. Thanks.